What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Beyond the Veil. I am your host, Sean Young, and today we got a super awesome guest. We have a woman of many hats, and I mean many hats, Mary Dalba. How you doing, Mary?
I'm great. How are you, Sean?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. It's been a wild day.
And it's early, so much more to
Very early.
come.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. More to come. More, more,
more to come.
more wild things in store for this episode and in my
Mhm.
day. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that. Mary, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name's Mary Dalba. I'm from the Boston, Massachusetts area, so you might hear my accent as we chat. Um, I have been on a spiritual journey for a long time, and part of my spiritual journey is to be in service. So I do psychic medium readings. I'm an astrologer, a reverend, a hypnotist, spiritual coach. Currently, right now, I'm getting my master's in spirituality because I want to open some type of spiritual community where people feel supported, even if they're not in a particular religion. So I'm working on that with my master's work, and yeah, so I'm just here to connect with spirit and help folks. That's my job, my love.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we were talking before we hit record, and there's a lot of synchronicities that have been happening. And
Mhm.
if the listeners or viewers, if you picked up on them, there's more to come in this episode, and it
Mhm.
it absolutely just blows my mind as to how the universe or spirit is lining everything up to share a message, and I'm just absolutely mind blown.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I call them tricky spirits, not like in a way that they are trying to deceive you. It's more of like a cleverness about them. They're tricky. When they do things, I'm like, oh, you guys are funny. Stop it. You know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you got something lined up here.
Mhm. Mhm.
But you just spoke about people in different religions that believe in some of the things that you and I do,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I like to talk about is spirituality and a belief structure. And
Yeah.
originally, this show, in place of this show, was going to be about spirituality.
Mhm.
And I started thinking about it, and I said, spirituality and supernatural go hand in hand.
Mhm.
If you look through any religion, there's some form of supernatural power or supernatural entity within that spirituality or that belief structure. So I
Mhm.
think I think that that skeleton led
Yeah.
me here.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny you said skeleton because in my spiritual journey, we were talking offline about dreams and how they can tell you a lot. And what part of the reason why I wanted to open a community was because I had a dream. We were talking about dreams.
Mhm.
And I had a spirit come to me that was like, okay, well, this is what you're doing now. And yeah, you got to trust it. And I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wait, what am I doing? So, I think if we can trust that there is there's spirits out there, there's folks that are watching out for us. It's not paranormal state where they're dragging you out of bed. That's not how this,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but not like that.
Yeah.
No, so I think it's if we can trust the intuition, I don't think you have to be necessarily practicing this work all the time, but just to trust your intuition. I mean, that's a normal human thing. So,
Yeah.
but there's some influence in there. There's no doubt there's some influence in there from that side, the other side.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
before we get into your story and some of the things that you do, how's your day been, Mary?
It's been great. I've had let's see, I had a meeting this morning with a marketing person, and then also I'm on a board that talks about and supports folks that are dealing with homelessness. So
Oh
we
wow.
had a meeting today, and then now I'm here recording the podcast and seeing some clients tonight. So it's a busy day, but I'm
Yeah.
blessed. I'm blessed. I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, homelessness is something that is like near and dear to my heart. I watched a
Mhm.
documentary on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it. I might have
Mhm.
to like dive deep into it. And I watched it, and there's like one or two stories that absolutely wrecked me. The stories were out of like Portland and
Yeah.
Seattle, and it absolutely wrecked me because um, there was a woman in one particular case. There was a woman who had two kids, and she had to lie to her kids and say, "Hey, we're just spending the night over at the YMCA."
Yeah.
right, we're going on an adventure. And she didn't want to let her kids know how bad it was for them.
Yeah.
And it hurt to watch that.
Yeah. It
And it's
it's a it's a problem. It's a big problem. I think it's one that we as humans cannot ignore. And it's interesting because I part of the reason I've had friends that have experienced homelessness. I was in a relationship with someone who was homeless for a while. Um, and there's a documentary out there, docu-series on YouTube called Soft White Underbelly,
mm,
and they interview folks that are on LA Skid Row
yeah,
and just the problems that are there. You know, you think Skid Row is a small thing. It's not a small thing anymore. It's blocks and blocks of places in LA, you know.
oh yeah,
So you'll see millions of dollar houses 2 blocks away, and then you hit Skid Row, and it's yeah. I think it's too big to be ignored at this point, and hopefully we stop doing that. But we'll see.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for is like like hearing somebody's story, like
Mhm.
why what led them to get to here. And one of the things that I found out through talking to people that have suffered from homelessness or that are currently going through it is their stories are not the same, right? Like one person didn't just become an alcoholic and then lose everything that they have, right?
Yeah.
Some people lost everything in a divorce.
Mhm.
Some people couldn't maintain a job because of existential circumstances out of their
Sure.
control, and they just lost everything, right? And so it's really it's disheartening to see when people are homeless and there's nothing that we can do about it.
No. No, I think education's a really important part of it because I think we know what the problem is, and I don't think, you know, we have any I think it depends on the parts of the country. You know, I'm in Massachusetts, so winters are real we have rough winters. You know, as opposed to maybe in LA or, you know, Florida, but those aren't great places either. To no place is good to be homeless. It's just and I think one of the biggest things that I've been thinking about is, you know, we were inconvenienced with COVID. You know, like I'd walk into a gas station and be like, I need to use the bathroom. And they're like, good luck with that because you're not using ours.
Yeah,
Well, that's what people with homelessness experience all the time. So we were slightly inconvenienced. We go back out to our car and whatever. Well, yeah, but that's folks with homelessness are trying to find a place to sit down and go to the bathroom or do whatever, you know, but take wash up, whatever it is. So I think it's a lot of awareness and it's a something that's near and dear to my heart. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think if you're a spiritual person or you're a person that understands there's more than one world, if you want to say,
yeah.
then sort of kind of our responsibility to realize how connected we all are, even, you know, no matter who they are. No
Yeah,
matter who they are.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think the biggest issue that I have, one of the biggest issues that I have surrounding homelessness is these content creators that go out and they got cameras and they're like, here's $100, here's $1,000. They're doing it for the clicks and the views
Yeah.
and the comments. And it's like, that's not humanity.
Mm-mm.
That is
Mm.
exposure at that point.
Yeah. I
If
agree.
you want to be, if you want to show your humanity, go work at a soup kitchen,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Go take somebody to go buy clothes
Right.
without the camera crew, and that's the biggest issue that I have is like a lack of humanity
I
and
agree.
decency.
Well, you know what I mean, and I'm gonna sound so, weird saying this, but I remember I a friend of you know, a friend of mine, I'm also an artist, so we dumpster dive a lot.
Mhm.
You know, we're looking for
Yeah,
material, stuff like that. And when I dumpster dive, you know, I'm not dressed, I'm in jeans and boots and whatever, and I if people see me hanging around the dumpster or if I'm going through a trash again, it's just material, whatever, they don't I'm treated much different than if
oh
I'm a
yeah,
woman walking down the street.
yeah,
I'm the same person. But because of the what I'm doing, they're making an assumption about me, and so you know, and that's I mean, that's nothing for me, but for someone who's dealing with homelessness, that's huge because it's just another way, like you said, the humanity. There's you know no humanity, and sometimes people you just I don't want to talk to them. I don't know how they're going to be. Well, they could be. Why don't you talk to them and see?
yeah, yeah. They
They're
could have they could be the best human being in the world.
that's
We
right.
just didn't take the time to listen to them.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think that's across the board. Again, I go into across the board. You know, we're not people we work with, our neighbors. I mean, it's not just folks that are struggling. I mean, it's across the board. And
yeah,
yeah, so I struggle with how can you say you're a spiritual person and then you're not. I think some of the worst people go into a church and pray every Sunday for an hour and they come out and they just leave all that humanity right back in the church till they walk in, you know. for that next hour next Sunday. And then they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave all the BS at the door. Oh, I'm so holy." And then, "Whoop, let me take it back and do what I'm doing." So, you're gonna talk the talk and walk the walk or not,
Yep.
Some days you don't.
I've
Yeah.
coined that as the Sunday morning Christian.
Mhm. Yeah,
I grew up with Sunday morning Christians for grandparents. I hated it, and I hate it to this day.
yeah,
And I think that if you're, I mean, obviously we're human and we're fallible, right? And
of
we
course.
mess up, right?
Often.
But like going, the idea of going to a church and praying and asking for forgiveness is the understanding that when you leave those doors, you don't commit the same sins that you did before,
Correct. Correct. I agree with you
right?
completely.
Or
Yeah.
try hard not to, but people are going there to absolve themselves and
Mhm.
feel good, and then
Feel
coming out
better.
and they're like, I'm good for the next 6 days, and then
Mhm.
I'll go right back to doing what I did
Ex
before.
exactly, and that's not how we change the world,
No,
so mm,
absolutely not.
right? So
Absolutely. That is one of the many reasons why I stepped away from organized religion and kind of
mhm.
found my path and where I'm at now in spirituality. But that's not why we're here.
No, but I will say that that's part of the reason why I wanna create that community because there are folks that are spiritual but non-religious that need places to gather and have community support. I think there's too many of us floating around on our own.
Yeah,
So that's why I wanna create that. So you don't have to believe in the same God I do, but we at least can sit next to each other and break bread and, you know,
absolutely.
get some spirituality. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So, Mary, let's go ahead and dive into it.
Sure.
When was the first time that you realized that you had ability or that you had gifts that you were
Yeah.
able to share?
Well, I love telling this story because my mother, who's I call the saint, who's a very strict Irish Catholic,
Mm.
took me to Salem, Massachusetts, if y'all know what Salem is, known as Witch City, right?
Ooh.
And she was like, "Do you want a deck of tarot cards? I'll get you a deck. You can play with them. It'll be fun. Like you won't do anything with those." And I was 15 and now I'm speeding towards 51 and I'm like, "Well, that wasn't a
thank,
phase, mom. That wasn't a
thank,
phase."
thank you, Mom.
Thank you. Yeah, she's like, but it's always fun to talk about. And I think throughout my journey, I had a real hard time. My religion of origin is Catholic, obviously, so I had a real hard time with the church. And I know it fulfills different people different ways, so I don't have any problem with the church. But I didn't like that. I felt like I couldn't have a hand in like as a woman. I
Mhm.
really couldn't have a hand in sort of ministering. I know there's lay positions, but I couldn't become a priest. I couldn't, do a lot of things in the church, and I felt like that we're missing something if not everybody can participate, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and you can say, "Well, I can do other things," but it's like I wanna stand on church, on an altar and help people feel it. So,
Mhm.
that's why I stepped away, and through my journey, I mean, I've been in covens, Wiccan covens. I was initiated into Santeria, and also voodoo. I've studied different Wiccan traditions. I've studied different Christian religions. And I sorta have a little like what I believe my spirituality is, and my big thing is just let's try to be good to each other and make the spirits proud. However you do
Absolutely.
that, however you do it, you know? And I don't
Absolutely.
think I could do it without spirits, like, I don't think I could do it without that spirituality,
Yeah.
um, because some days are really hard and I have to like, I look up, because I look up and I'm like, "Could you do something to let me know that this is good? Because like, I'm ready to drive my car to the airport, take off, and go somewhere where no one can find me. Help me out." And then I get the little, there you go. Oh, got it. Sorry.
Never question me again.
No, well, that's and I do all the time, though. I do. I
Yeah.
do. They're like, "Oh, here we go again. Bink."
Yeah.
So but it's little things I think we have to notice too in our and this I think goes for paranormal things too. It's like the details are what we really where we really get it from. So, it's what do I know? Here's an example. Let me tell you a quick example. So, my dad passed in May of 2014. I was in Florida going through a Santeria initiation in October of 2014. So, I'm at the Florida airport. At the time, there was the Coke cans that had the names on them,
Mhm.
right? So, I'm standing there and facing me right eye to eye. Now, you can't tell I'm 5 feet tall, so
Mhm.
that's saying something. I'm standing there eye to eye, and the name is James. Now, my dad went by an American version of his name, so he was Giacomo,
Mhm.
went by James, and his nickname was Jack. So he, you know, it's just we all knew him as Jack.
Yeah.
So it's facing me, this Coke can. So I buy it. I send a picture to my brother, who's definitely not into spirituality at all. He sent me a text back and said, I sent him a text and said, "Do you think this is dad like saying hi?" And he wrote me back. He goes, "You're asking me that question?" He's like, "Me?" He's like, "Yeah, of course. Like it's dad saying hi." Like he was just, brushing me off.
Yeah.
So I was like, "I don't know, dad." I'm looking at him like, I don't know. So then I get on the plane and the flight attendant comes over and says, "What would you like to drink?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love a Diet Coke." And so when she's coming over to me, I can see her with the can and I can see, and I start to cry because the can says, "Have a Coke with dad." And I'm like, "Oh, oh, oh," right? So the guy next to me
Wow.
is this guy, he's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I yeah, it's the Coke. I'm sorry." Like I cry and I still have them to this day. But I said to my father, I was like, "No, I don't know. Is this you?" And he's like, "Hold on, let me roll up my sleeves."
Yeah.
Boop, you know. So it's those details because I told someone that story and they're like, "Yeah, but maybe." And I'm like, I'm not explaining that away. That is my dad. So
Yeah.
that's the things I say to people. Like you have to recognize these signs from the spirit world because sometimes they don't whack you over the head.
Yeah.
So, but I think we're also scared of that too. Like, what if there are spirits watching me? Well, some of them are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think that we want the answers, but we're not ready for them, you know.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's very
Uh,
true. Hmm.
Um, for me, when I was going through my journey, my spiritual journey, back in like 2012,
Hmm.
maybe 2010, I was doing research into different religions, right? So like I looked in Catholicism.
Hmm.
Obviously, I was Christian, so I knew enough at that point. Islam, a bunch of them, and I ended on Satanism.
Yep.
And fast forward, moved to Alaska. On the way to Alaska, like I was like, I'm Norse pagan now, right? Like I believe in the Norse gods, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
driving up to Alaska, and I'm in this just complete disbelief of like that it's real,
Hmm.
and I just said, Odin, if you're real, like give me a sign, dude, because I need it. I get to the border of Canada and Alaska, and
Hmm.
right on the inside are a ton of crows,
Oh,
or sorry, ravens,
oh,
just sitting there. And they're not sitting there just hanging out. They're sitting there staring at me. And this
right.
is in January. January, Mary. No birds should be there anywhere close. And I was like, okay,
Okay.
I get it.
All right.
Right.
Mhm.
And then a few years ago, and then we're a few years removed from that situation.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I'm having doubts again, and I'm driving down the road, and I'm like, Odin, if you are real, like, and I forgot the other one.
Mhm.
I said, Odin, if you're real, like, show me a sign. And I stop at this stoplight, and I
Mhm.
look over on the sidewalk, and there's a raven right there, and
Mhm.
he's like looking, and he like turns to me and locked eyes, just locked eyes, and I was like, okay. And
Okay.
he didn't fly away. He didn't move.
Mhm.
Cars were passing by. He stayed locked on. When I drove, his head turned,
Oh.
and I was like, okay, like I
What?
don't need to ask anymore.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And so it's those small little moments that we pick up that we just really have to pay attention to or listen.
Right, right. And I think the movies, like, have this big when they're doing the hero's journey in the movie, it's like all of a sudden it's like it's huge. They have this huge epiphany. They're, on the ground in the church and they're crying and it comes to them. It's like, no, sometimes there's a raven on the side of the road that's just looking at you saying, "What are you asking me that question for?"
Yeah, yeah,
So it's I think we do again, we don't want to accept the answers. I think that's a great point. We don't. But then the spirits are like, "Well, you asked.
yeah.
So here you go." Oops. Hmm. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
you weren't ready for it, but now you're going to have to be ready for
Exactly,
it. so,
exactly. Mhm.
so when did you start diving into psychic mediumship?
So I went into the corporate this is what's really funny. I went into the corporate world. I went to college, went in the corporate world. I was a manager and director of call centers, so I did a lot of customer service, fundraising stuff, and left that. try to go into other roles as and I did this all on the side too when I was in corporate. So like on a Saturday night, I'd be working a party, doing readings, and then Monday I'd be back wearing my business suit. Like
Yeah.
it's just. So yeah, I finally got laid off 3 times in 3 years. And I said, okay, I've been doing this part-time. People were encouraging me to go out on my own. I was like, I was too afraid. And then when I got laid off the third time, I said, got it. Okay. I'm gonna try this. Because worst that can happen is it doesn't work as a full-time gig and I go back into the corporate world. I had all that experience. But I can happily say, for 11 years, I've been out on my own, doing my work, psychic medium work, all that kind of stuff. And it's brought me a ton of joy. When they say that you find the job you love, you never work a day in your life, and I agree with
Yeah.
that. There have been some rough times. I'm not going to say there hasn't been, but and tough readings, tough topics you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But I think also it was a chance for me to be in service. So that's and the spirits are supporting me in that. When they stop and say you got to go do something else, I'll go do something else.
Yeah.
But that's been my journey so far, and I've really truly loved it. I really have. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
I always find it intriguing because I've had some abilities, and it scared me when I started stepping into it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reel myself back because
yeah.
I don't want to be perceived as crazy. Is that something that you kind of went through?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it started with my family. They were like, "You doing what? You doing? Wait, what?"
Mm,
And, back in the day when my parents knew psychics, they were, the crazy lady on the corner who
yeah.
had her like, little shop and you'd go in and she'd be scary and all that. And I'm, walking into corporate and events going, yeah, I'm here. I can handle it. It's fine. I'm in the corner, doing the readings. And but yeah, I get weird looks when I tell people I'm a psychic medium or, I'm a hypnotist or I'm in grad school for spirituality. They're like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna open a community. You can come, you know?
Yeah.
But I always look at the world as or this world as the spirits are here to guide us. I think when it gets too hard, we know enough we have to step back from it.
Yeah.
Like, when it gets too much. I think that happens I could be wrong, but, like, for folks that are in addiction, I think sometimes, like, this is too hard. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I have to do something new. And I think that's where we are. Just I think when we recognize that in our lives and our spirituality and all that, it's like, "Okay, I gotta make a change because this is just getting too hard for this is too hard."
Yeah.
Um, I've lost my life, my thoughts, my whatever, because all of this is too hard. So, um, that's why I think we have a lot of problems these days because people are not listening to the heart or what the guidance is. They're just, "Okay, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
It's what I gotta do." No, you don't. Who told you that?
They're stuck in the hamster wheel.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I say to people, like, start your own you may be working 100 hours a week, but it is yours.
Yeah.
It's mine. Like, I will work my butt off because it's mine. And I'm really, part of this drive is to really, be in service to people because they need it. We all
Yeah.
need it. I need it. There's been times people have lifted me out of the ditch, and I wanna bring that back to other people too.
Yeah.
So, sorry I'm sort of on my soapbox right now, Sean, but
No, no, you're
it
okay.
it's
This is
true.
what we're here for.
Yeah, I just think, as human beings, we don't always know how powerful and how much we can help ourselves and other people. And that takes an experience for us to realize that we are still too stupid. And I say we, I'm in this.
Yeah.
Still too stupid to go, wow, that's not working for me. I should make a change. It's like, well, that's not working for me. Hmm. Okay, I'll go back to it tomorrow. Well, that's not working for me. Hmm. It's all right. It'll work for me tomorrow. Well, it's still not working for me. Huh. What do I do? What do you do? You do
Yeah.
something, and but I understand sometimes people need to be loved into that place of doing something. I understand that. It's
Yeah.
it can be when you're down, you're down. You're down. So,
Oh,
yeah, we got to love people back up. I
yeah.
think especially these days.
I'm a huge advocate for giving back to the community that gave you so much, right? Like I know if it wasn't for certain communities when I got sober,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have, I would have been able to maintain some kind of sobriety, but I wouldn't be there,
Right.
right? I wouldn't
Right.
have the encouragement of other people.
Right.
So I give back to those communities. I host meetings on Wednesday nights for those communities.
Yeah.
And I do the podcast because that's part of my way of giving back
Yeah.
and part of my program, really.
Mhm. Yeah, well,
And
that's service. That's the
yeah,
service. The thing is, I wish more people, like, realize that, like, yeah, you you think about corporations, they're always doing like, "Oh, we're gonna do charity events and our day of doing whatever," and it's like, that's amazing, and of
Yeah.
course, everybody will love that, but also, like, what are we doing day to day,
Yeah.
you know? What are we doing day to day? So, are we doing just a photo op? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So, like you
Are
said
you
oh,
are you just signing a check away and giving it to an organization that might need it, and shaking a hand, and maybe you're doing a ribbon cutting and then turning
mhm,
around and talking shit, sorry for the language, talking shit about the
mhm,
organization you just gave money to?
right,
Or are you actually going out there and getting your hands dirty in that organization and helping that organization out in ways that transcend money?
right. Money's important, I'm not saying it's not, but sometimes you need people to be part of it because you need the community. You need that
Yeah.
community. So for solo folks out there, like in like spiritual practices that are solo, even if you're doing it with your friends, I think there's some kind of like learning that happens. Not
Mhm.
saying you can't have individual spirituality and work it on your own, of course, but I don't know. These days it feels very isolating and lonely. It just
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to me, especially after COVID when we were all locked in and locked down. It's like, I don't know. I've seen people struggle coming back from that. And it's a new normal that I think we need more help with.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, getting into the next topic, astrology.
Ooh, yeah.
I've I have never, well, I'm not saying I have never because that would be a lie. I've met people, but I haven't really asked this question.
Mhm.
What is the study of astrology? Because to me, I step outside, look at the stars, and I'm like, there's the Big
Wow.
Dipper.
Right.
That's what astrology is to me.
Yeah.
What is it to you?
Well, I think astrology and astronomy are very tightly knit. Astronomy is the study of the stars in the sky and all that work. Astrology is taking those, stars in the sky and giving them definitions of how they can affect a person's life. So, it's a science that I think, we depends on who you talk to, but I believe it's a science that, can help people grow in their spiritual life, the things that they wanna do, because the chart tells a lot.
Hmm.
Tells a lot. And it tells where people grew up. It tells if people have been in bad relationships. It tells how wildly successful they are, because it's a snapshot of where everything was the day you were born.
Wow.
And there's probably nobody else who has the same chart as you. Even like twins, their timing is still, you know, and
Hmm.
things can change even in 5 minutes. So that's the wonderful thing about astrology is that when I speak with someone, I work with someone, it's like, this is all you. Like I'm not even like, I could say to you, like, "Oh, I could see you doing this or that," like, from a psychic perspective, but the astrology chart really tells me, like,
Yeah.
what they're designed to be doing and to be enjoying and all that, so it's a real key to figuring yourself out, and it's definitely more than your sun sign. So, if you read your horoscope every day, you're starting out okay, but there's much more to you than just, my sun sign's a Cancer kinda thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So that's weird you say Cancer because I'm a Cancer.
I figured. I
Um,
I knew that.
I'm sure you did. Um, wow, that threw me off. Because I have the next question in mind. I just replayed the
You're like,
tape.
"Huh?"
What? Anyway, has there ever been like a chart or like a time where you've done a reading for somebody where you're like, I don't want to give them this information, A, because they don't need to know it right now, or B, it's something that's catastrophic in their life, so catastrophic in their life that it's going to affect the way that they operate.
Mm. Yeah, I've had those moments. What I've learned over the years is I try to couch it in such a way that's like, okay, so your chart shows me that you are very expansive and spiritual and creative. This is Neptune I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So Neptune has, I call Neptune, you're either the artist or the addict
Hmm.
because Neptune is very escapism. So do you escape in art? Do you escape in addiction? And listen, addiction's everything, like food, sex, whatever it is. So I might say to somebody, "You have such a potential for, this artwork and this thing," depending on their chart. Be careful of overindulging because it also could expand you into a place of, overindulging in things. So I'll say it in a way that I think most people pick up what I put down,
Yeah.
because I don't want to say to someone like, "This is definitely going to happen." We all have our choices, but I may like warn them, like, "Just be careful here because this could go a little out of whack for you, and I just want you to go on more of the positive side." So that's how I say it. Yeah, I don't predict like car accidents and things like that. But I will say to people like, "Hey, how are things been in your life?" "Well, this and that's going on." "All right, why don't you maybe talk to somebody about that, or, go see someone about that. Or, sometimes people come and they're like, I don't know whether to divorce or not.
Yeah,
And I can look at their chart and say, well, this is what I'm seeing. So if that person isn't fulfilling the need, maybe it's talking to them to see if they can, but maybe they're not the person. Which,
absolutely.
it's hard. It's hard. I get it. When you love somebody, oh, you love somebody. I get it.
It's hard to
Mm,
hear and hard to accept, and that's a
mhm.
story I'll share with you at the end of this.
Oh, that sounds
Uh,
good.
yeah, it's funny you bring up divorce too.
Ah,
Uh, um, okay, so I've had hypnotist on
mhm.
my show, but it's a different form of hypnosis.
Yep.
What is hypnosis like for you, or how do you practice it with clients?
Yeah, I love hypnosis because people can make some big changes easily.
Mhm.
Um, so I love it when people say to me, "I can't be hypnotized." They're like, "No, I can't be hypnotized." I'm like, "Okay." First of all, I'm a great hypnotist, so I know I'm going to. But the other thing is we're in and out of it every day. Hypnosis is the definition of very relaxed or very focused. Right now, we're very focused talking to each other. We're in a light
Yeah,
state of hypnosis, right? Or if you're like super relaxed, you're reading a book on your couch and like a car drives by and you weren't expecting it, you're going to jump. That's a state of hypnosis.
yeah,
So that's why people have to be very careful of what they let play on in the background in their home or if they're out somewhere because your subconscious mind's wide open and it's pulling in information all the time. So if you leave like YouTube on with, I don't know, some people arguing, you got a political thing on, your dreams are not going to be so good. You want to feed your mind. We talk about feeding ourselves. Well, also feeding our mind with really positive things that can make a difference. Our subconscious is running in the background all the time. So in hypnosis, I'm going in and I'm changing, with permission and with consultation with my client. My role is to go in and give you the suggestion.
mhm,
So I've made the suggestion so your brain will accept them in such a way that you're like, yeah, this is great. Um, but I also am not there to control it. I'm there to give the suggestion. Really, it's a suggestion, but if you decide like, I don't like that suggestion, it's going to go right out the window. So I think that we are in a state of hypnosis, light hypnosis all day, every day. So that's the one piece of advice I'd give to people is if you're hearing a lot of negative stuff in the background, maybe it's time to change what you're listening to,
yeah.
you know? Um, so that's I put on some of that lo-fi music that's out there, some of the subliminal stuff that's out there, and sometimes, yeah, sure, I'll put Doja Cat on my car and drive off because I mean, why not?
Who
But
doesn't like Doja Cat?
right? But, who does like, it's also just being aware. We're not one of the biggest things I find, and this is not just with hypnosis, just in life, is that, like I talked about, we go through sort of it's a habit, so we're not really engaged, and I think we need a lot more of that. Hypnosis helps us with that. It engages our mind to be more positive, um, if we accept those suggestions. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very. We have a lot of stuff going on in the background all the
we
time.
sure do. Mhm,
And a lot of things that you just don't realize you lose focus on, but that stuff creeps in your brain and starts
mhm,
instilling stuff, right? So
mhm,
that's why, like, in my last marriage, my ex-wife would sit there and she would have TikTok just going on boom, boom, boom. But she
mhm,
would be listening to these different TikToks that were like instilling these thoughts in her brain
mhm,
that are very, very harmful to not just her,
mhm,
but to the relationship.
mhm.
And I'm like, if you continue to watch those or subject yourself to those, you're gonna start thinking like that.
Yeah,
And it ended up happening that way. And I
yeah.
was just like,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
told you, it's
Yeah,
life. Life happens.
it is, and some people need to go down those rabbit holes to learn they shouldn't be down those rabbit holes. I hate to
Yeah.
say it, but that's yeah, it's interesting because people will say to me, "Oh, my mind's too strong. There's no way I'm gonna take that suggestion." And I'll say, "Okay, yeah, I mean, that's possible, but what if it's not?"
Yeah.
I think someone like Andrew Tate is someone that can really brainwash somebody into believing certain things. If you listen to him long enough, right, you're gonna start going, "Oh, he's making sense." So, we gotta be really careful what we're putting into our minds because, like you said, your ex was, like, listening to these things that were, probably not so great for her. But we get caught up because our mind starts going, "Oh, are we gonna listen to that again? Are we gonna focus on that again? Oh, I remember that from yesterday. What are we doing?" And we can get caught in the loop.
Yeah.
So we got to be real careful of that. It's a more of an individual awareness and again, community awareness, but individual awareness. Like, what are we doing? We're not just going through our day.
Yeah.
We can't just be doing that anymore. So
Yeah. You talked about being in a constant state of hypnosis, and actually the other hypnotist that I had on the show said the
mhm,
same exact thing. He's like, you wouldn't believe the level of hypnosis that you subject yourself to every day. It could be, just background noise, but it could also be like the billboard that you're driving past, right? That can
mhm,
hypnotize you.
yeah,
Um, even I made these I made these flyers for my October session, which is at the time of this recording
yeah,
hasn't happened, but it will happen.
mhm,
And people are like, that is hypnotizing just
mhm,
looking at it.
mhm,
And so we don't realize like the state of hypnosis that we subject ourselves to every day,
every day.
and then just move about our day, right?
Mhm.
So we are continuously hypnotized by everything or by a lot of things in our day.
In our day, yeah,
Yeah.
and we have opinions about them, then we sort them in there, it's like that filing cabinet of the
Yeah.
subconscious, and do I pull that out? Do I look at that? What am I doing with it? So, yeah, I know. So I'll tell you, like, I would fall asleep, and I know better, but I was watching a particular, court case that was a
Hmm.
national court case on YouTube, they broadcast them now, so
Yeah.
I fell asleep to it, and I woke up, and I was like I did not feel good, and I looked at the TV, and I'm like, "Oh, that's why," because there's people arguing back and forth about crimes and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Okay, can't do that anymore. I gotta make sure I shut it off or I put it on a timer." So, yeah, it's very important to, yeah, what do we wanna bring into our lives? That's the thing we put in the background, you know?
Yeah. Yep, and
So
I completely agree with you there.
mm,
And I, instead of falling asleep to stuff like that,
mm,
I started replacing that with like affirmations. And I
yes.
wake up and I'm like, I'm in a great mood.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
It's true. It's so simple, and yet we don't think it's powerful, but it's really powerful. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, Mary, what is in the future for you?
Well, hopefully, I'm gonna graduate in May of 2024 with my master's in spirituality, start my spiritual but non-religious community, and then, fingers crossed, I might go back for a second master's on community engagement so that we can bring invite more people in. Volunteering is that's a bit of a struggle sometimes. I'm on some nonprofit boards, so I was like, "Well, maybe let me get some more information, see how we can bring people in." So,
Yeah,
that's the next thing, and I'll still be off doing my psychic medium work and, uh, teaching classes and all kinds of great stuff, so,
that is
um,
awesome.
that's it, you know?
That is awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to share this story with you.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, and this is for all the listeners. For anybody who's new, who has never heard my story, anything like
Mhm,
this, uh, I'm about to get a little bit deep, and it could get a little bit triggering. So, it's past December. I was at home in Alaska. I don't live in Alaska anymore, but
mhm,
I was at home in Alaska, and one day my at the time wife
mhm,
walked in and said, "Hey, I'm not happy in this relationship," and then the next day she said, "I don't want to be married." And then the next day, literally in a 4 day span, she went from "I'm not happy" to completely moved out of the house. And
ooh,
it wrecked me.
yeah,
Absolutely wrecked me. Now, I stayed sober. I mentioned before, I've been sober for almost 4 years now. I stayed sober through all that.
that's amazing,
And I
seriously.
had I had to get in out of the house because I was stuck in the house that we lived in with all the memories and everything like that. And I
Mm,
got out and I left and I came down to Maryland or West Virginia where my dad lives.
mhm,
Highly spiritual area.
mhm,
And while I'm here, or while I was there, I was only meant to be here for a month or so, I told myself.
mhm,
And um, I had two friends that came to me and they said, "Hey, um, she's cheating on you." And I was like,
mm,
"That's," I denied it, right? And I said, "This is not happening." Even though I had the thought in my brain that this was happening and there were so many signs pointing to it.
mhm,
But in that moment, I denied it.
yeah,
And in the last episode, in the last episode, I had mentioned that I had challenged psychic mediums before.
mhm,
And this is the instance that I did.
mhm,
And I said, if this is correct, prove it.
mhm,
And one of them gave me a name. Now, these two people do not know my ex wife. They
mhm,
couldn't point her out of a lineup. No, I mean, maybe
right.
psychically,
They figure
within
it
them.
out, but
Yeah, they'd figure
yeah,
it out. But they didn't know her, on a personal level. They
Mhm.
didn't know who she worked with. She didn't know. They didn't know who she associated with. One gave me a name, literally the guy's name, first and last name, and I was like,
Mhm.
just shocked. And then my second friend, who is no longer with us,
Oh,
she
sorry.
passed on. She's in a much better place. She she said, I if I seen a picture, I could tell you who it is.
Mhm.
And I sent her three pictures, completely different people. One of them was him. I sent it to her, and she was like, "That's him."
Mm.
And from that point forward, I made it a choice, an active choice, never to challenge a psychic medium, because those were not answers. And they literally sat there and they said, "We don't want to tell you this.
Yeah,
This is going to wreck you."
yeah.
And I said, I need to know.
Mhm.
And from that point forward, I made a conscious effort and a conscious decision never to test a psychic medium, because I'm going to get the answers that I don't want.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. It's our
Yeah,
job, like, not to blow smoke up your nose, that's what I say.
yeah,
If you're any good, you gotta tell them, and then you do what you can with the information, want to, whatever, but you gotta
yeah.
tell them. But you just don't have to hit them with a 2 by 4, that's what I call it, don't hit them with a 2 by 4, you
Yeah, yeah.
know?
Don't knock them out.
Right, right. Be a little more gentle, try that,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh,
And so from that information, like after that, and after I got to a point where I was like, I need to heal from this, I did. And they said, well, now that you are there and you have the information, you can never go back to Alaska. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you can never step foot in Alaska because you're probably going to either end up in jail or dead. And I was like,
those are people who care about you.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, well, thank you for telling me. I was like, even if I wanted to go visit, they're like, no,
No.
never step foot back in Alaska. You are where you're meant to be. And then they gave me just enough information where it would help me along in life, and I wouldn't self-sabotage, because I have the propensity to self-sabotage. We all do.
We all do.
um yeah. And so they kind of helped make my life a little bit easier. I made the conscious effort or conscious decision to say I need to know, and they made the conscious effort to lighten it for me. So
Right. Yeah.
if you're hearing this and you're watching and you're listening, never test a psychic medium.
Oh.
Um, you're going to get what you don't want, but that you need.
Mhm. It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. I mean, so many readings I've done where at the end of it, I've been like, "Well, you asked." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In good I don't say that to people who are like, "Oh, I'm brokenhearted." No, I had a woman who one day was like, "I don't know where to live," and like we came up with, I think it was, Vienna,
Mm,
and she had family there, all this kind of stuff, and she looked at me and I said to her, "You asked."
yeah.
'Cause she's in Massachusetts. She's like, "Oh my god, I do have these connections, but" I'm like, "Well, you asked. So
Yeah.
decide what you wanna do with that, but that's where you should go right now." And she was like, "Oh, okay." Like, so, yeah, it's if you ask, we're gonna tell you.
Yeah. But you're not going to like the answers all the
No,
time.
not all the time. I don't even like them all the time. I'll reshuffle my cards, and my cards are like, "Bitch, you know better." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but, alright."
That's how it is with runes for me. I
Yeah.
have a
Oh,
bag of
yeah.
runes. I have a bag of runes down here, and I'll pull three out, and I'm like, shit,
Yeah.
put it back. And those three pop right back up. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
okay,
Owen's like, "You asked,
yeah,
so I didn't hang off a tree for 9 days for you to doubt me upside
right,
down and lose my eye. Thank you." You know?
yeah. And it's wild because I chose this shirt today.
Ah, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any, anyways, before we wrap up the show, Mary, where can we find you at?
So I am my website, marydalba.com. It's marydalba.com. You can also find me on all the social medias under my name, Mary Dalba. So please, like, stop by, say hello, tell me you heard me on the show, saw me, and please shout out and say hi. I'd love to give you a hug through the internet
That's awesome.
if you
That's
want one.
awesome. And I am seriously taking a trip within the next year up to Salem. I really,
Oh,
I have never been to Salem. I want to visit Salem so bad.
yeah.
Um, and if I do, I'm gonna stop by Boston.
Please. We'll sit down, we'll have coffee. It'll be
Yeah,
great. Yeah,
absolutely, it'll be fun.
absolutely. Yeah.
All righty,
So, well,
everybody.
thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. I appreciate it.
And Mary, thank you for sharing your experience with me and with us. I do appreciate it,
Of course.
and I look forward to seeing you grow and your business grow and everything that you do grow.
Thank you so much. And same. And same. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being a part of this episode and this situation. And go check Mary out. She's a great human being. She's doing great stuff. Till
Thank you.
next time, much love. Be good.